The first time Lara noticed the door on the third floor, it was dusk, the kind of twilight that blurred the line between real and imagined. She'd been living in her late uncle's Victorian estate for 3 weeks, a temporary arrangement until the legal tangle around his will unraveled. The house was 3 stories of creaking wood, tall windows that leaked sunlight in fractured panes, and shadows that stretched long before vanishing into corners. But the third floor, she hadn't dared explore it. Not until the lights flickered during a storm and she went searching for the fuse box, flashlight trembling in her grip. Her boots echoed on the aging steps. Dust rose from the faded carpet runner, stirred by her movement. The air grew colder as she ascended, drier with a faint metallic tinge, like old pennies soaked in vinegar. And there it was. The door, tall, narrow, painted the same ivory as the walls, so perfectly blended she might have missed it if not for the brass knob catching the flashlight's beam. She paused before it, her other hand lifted instinctively, brushing against the fine grain of the wood. It was warmer than the surrounding air, faintly vibrating beneath her fingertips. Why is this warm? Why is it locked from the outside? The knob refused to turn. A thick chain looped through a latch and into the wall, rusted but firm. Her breath fogged in the cold air. She leaned in. Silence. No wind, no whispering eaves, just the ticking of the hall clock 2 stories below, muffled but rhythmic. And yet, standing there, flashlight trembling in her fist, she felt watched. Not malevolently, not quite, but intently. She backed away without another touch. Back downstairs, Lara paced barefoot across the tiled kitchen, hands deep in her cardigan sleeves, nerves still prickling from the encounter. "You knew there was a third-floor room," she muttered, dragging her fingers through her dark, shoulder-length hair. "It's probably just storage." Still, she didn't sleep that night. 3 days later, it was Ezra who brought it up. Tall, wiry, and always clad in worn denim and corduroy blazers, he was the only person Lara trusted enough to visit the house. He leaned on the edge of the kitchen counter, arms crossed, coffee cooling in a chipped mug at his side. "So, any ghosts yet?" Lara smirked but didn't meet his eyes. "Not unless ghosts can lock doors from the outside." Ezra tilted his head. His curiosity was always sharper than his sarcasm. "Locked door? Where?" She hesitated, then relented. "Third floor, end of the hallway. There's a chain latch on it. I didn't put it there." He straightened, something in his expression shifting from casual to alert. "Did your uncle ever mention it?" "No," she said softly, wrapping both hands around her mug. "But it felt strange. The door, warm." "Warm?" Ezra echoed, voice flat. She nodded. "And the air, it felt charged, like standing next to an old speaker turned up too loud. You know that hum? That tension?" He set his mug down, the clink unnervingly loud. "You should stay downstairs for now," he said. "Seriously? Why?" Lara's voice hardened despite herself. "You believe in ghosts now?" Ezra didn't smile. "Number but I believe in secrets." That night, Lara sat curled in the parlor, surrounded by unopened boxes from her uncle's study. Candlelight flickered against the windows, shadows dancing across the dusty floorboards. The house groaned with age. She traced her fingers along the edge of a manila folder. Old medical records, judging by the scrawled headers. Her uncle had been reclusive, even in life. She knew he had no children, no spouse. Just her, niece, caretaker, reluctant inheritor. She opened the folder. Names, medications, notes on episodes, scribbled words, prolonged silence again. Heard voices, requests increasing. Lara swallowed, unease blooming in her gut. One name was circled. Margaret E. Holloway, 3rd floor. Her breath caught. Margaret. She closed the folder with trembling hands. Later, she stood at the base of the 3rd floor stairs. The light above was flickering again, fluttering like a dying moth. She took one step up, then another. She didn't remember walking the rest, only the sudden stillness as she stood once more before the door. The chain latch still held, but beneath it she noticed, barely, a sliver of warm light pooling from the crack below. Her knees weakened. Someone's in there. She pressed her ear to the door. Silence. Then, very faint, scratching. She reeled back. Her heart slammed in her chest, the sound almost painful in her ears. She fled. The storm had passed, but the night outside still pressed heavily against the windows, thick, humid, and too still. Ezra stood at the edge of the parlor, watching Lara sleep, curled sideways on the worn leather couch. Her face was half hidden behind her forearm, brows faintly furrowed even in rest. The candle she'd lit hours ago had burned low in its glass holder, flames stuttering. Shadows flickered up the wall, shifting across old portraits like memories being rewritten. Ezra ran a hand down his face. He hadn't planned to stay the night, but something in Lara's voice, some tremor she didn't mean to let slip, had stuck in him like a hook. Locked from the outside. The door is warm. Margaret Holloway. He pulled his phone from his jacket and opened the photo he'd snapped of the document she left half buried in papers. Margaret E. Holloway. 3rd floor. No date. No file number. No diagnosis, just the annotation. Prolonged silence again. Heard voices. Requests increasing. Ezra had grown up on hospital wards. His mother was a psychiatric nurse. He'd spent hours as a child thumbing through psychology textbooks she left around the house. The phrasing in the file, it wasn't academic, it was personal. It read like someone tracking a secret, or suppressing it. He glanced at Lara again. Her breathing had slowed. Her lips parted slightly, lashes trembling against her cheeks. Vulnerable in a way she never allowed herself to be when awake. He turned away before he lingered too long. The stairs to the 3rd floor moaned beneath his feet like warning breaths. He climbed slowly, his phone light casting long, skeletal shadows against the wallpaper. A faded pattern of roses and latticework, peeled at the corners, as if the house itself were unraveling. At the top, the hallway narrowed. Air pressed inward. The door was exactly as Lara described. Ivory, featureless, nearly camouflaged against the plaster walls. The brass chain was thick, bolted into the wall, looped tight across the door's width. Ezra stepped closer. The warmth was real. His palm hovered inches from the wood, and he felt it a low, pulsing heat, like body heat radiating from skin after fever. No draft, no heater nearby, no light this time from underneath. He knelt. There was something under the door, a strip of torn fabric. He pinched it between 2 fingers and tugged gently. It came loose without resistance. It was yellowed with age, frayed at one edge, and damp. He held it to his nose, a sharp, acrid scent. Not blood, not mold. Something like sweat, but fouler. The tang of something trapped too long. Ezra stood abruptly, eyes scanning the ceiling, the floor, the hinges. No signs of forced entry, no recent use. Yet something behind that door was alive. He pressed his ear to the wood. Nothing. But just as he began to pull away, tap a faint click. So subtle it might have been a settling board. But Ezra had lived in enough old houses to know the language of wood. This wasn't that he stepped back and whispered. "Hello?" Silence. Then another tap, deliberate. Ezra's throat tightened. Don't be a damn fool, there's probably a squirrel stuck in the wall. Or an old ventilation shaft. Something explainable. But something in him, something that had sharpened since his father's disappearance 5 years ago, refused to accept easy answers. He descended quietly, not wanting to wake Lara. Back in the parlor, he rifled through the box of documents she'd left scattered. Most were invoices, old medical summaries, photographs with faces scratched out. Then another folder. This one slim, almost empty, save for a folded sheet tucked inside. He opened it with cautious fingers, typed on the page, "Patient M.H. no longer recognizes reflections as self. Reacts violently to mention of stairs or closed doors. has ceased verbal interaction with staff. Only repeats, "Don't let her open it again." Ezra's chest tightened. He read it again. "Don't let her open it again." His mind caught on the implications. Margaret wasn't talking about herself. She was warning someone. Someone like Lara Morning Light began to creep into the house around 4 a.m., ghostly pale through the parlor windows. Ezra sat beside Lara, a blanket now draped over her shoulders. She stirred slightly, eyelids twitching as if caught in a dream. He reached out and brushed a stray hair from her cheek. Her skin was cold. "Too cold, Lara?" he whispered, nudging her gently. "You all right?" She stirred, murmured something unintelligible. Then, without opening her eyes, she whispered, "The chain's not real." Ezra froze. "What?" She exhaled, sinking deeper into sleep. It was never locked for her. His hand dropped from her shoulder. He sat still for a long moment, pulse hammering in his ears. Every hair on his arm stood up. It took him nearly an hour to fall into a light, anxious sleep on the armchair opposite her. And even then, he dreamed of a door at the end of a hallway, and a woman's voice whispering from the other side. Lara stood at the foot of the stairs, barefoot, body still wrapped in the weight of her nightmare. She could still feel the sound, a sound that didn't belong in the waking world. It wasn't screaming, not quite. It was humming, deep and constant, like breath echoing down a long, sealed hallway. Ezra was still asleep in the armchair when she moved past him. The photo she'd found. Margaret. 3rd floor, 1958. Remained tucked in her sleeve, the paper warm from the heat of her skin. The house seemed to hold its breath as she ascended. At the top of the stairs, the chain was gone. Her pulse slowed, not accelerated, slowed, the way time bends in dreams. She stepped forward, fingers ghosting over the doorknob. It wasn't locked. It was never locked. The door opened. The air inside was hot, damp. The smell was old skin and starch and lavender and something sour. Buried. Yellowed wallpaper curled from the walls. A child's metal bed frame gleamed faintly in a pool of amber light. There were toys arranged on a low shelf, dusty still, as though waiting for small, forgotten hands. Then she saw the mirror. Full length. Freestanding. The surface was rippled, as if made of water or smoke or something trying too hard to pretend it was glass. Lara stared into it and saw Margaret. Braided hair, hollow cheeks, pale eyes. She didn't mimic Lara's movements. She stared straight ahead, breathing, waiting. Then her lips moved. "I'm what they erased." Lara stumbled back a step. In the mirror, Margaret stepped forward. The memory slammed into her. Sharper than dream, older than thought. A hospital room, white restraints. A man leaning over her, Uncle Rin, with shaking hands and eyes that didn't see her. "She keeps calling herself Margaret," he was saying. "She's delusional. The trauma's fractured her identity." Lara sank to her knees. It was me, she realized, hands pressed to her face. Not a ghost. Not a girl. A piece of myself they locked away. A child that remembered something the adults wouldn't believe. Ezra's voice called faintly from the hallway, then footsteps rushing forward. He stopped behind her. "Lara, what the hell is this?" She turned toward him, dazed. "They erased her, my family. They buried Margaret in this room, and when she came back, they called her sick." Ezra crouched beside her, gripping her hand tightly. "Then let's get out of here, now." But Lara shook her head. "I don't think I can leave, until she does." She stood, walked slowly to the mirror, and pressed her palm to the glass. Margaret did the same. The ripple stilled. The hum ceased. And for a moment, there was silence. Not emptiness. Peace. 3 weeks later, Lara stood outside the front gate of the estate, suitcase in hand. The door was locked now. Really locked. And the 3rd floor remained sealed. Ezra waited in the car, engine idling, window down. She looked back once. "Goodbye," she whispered. Whether to Margaret or to herself, she wasn't sure. 1 year later, Lara's book, The Locked Room, A Family's Forgotten Child, sat on Ezra's shelf, spine worn from rereading. She'd moved to the coast, started over, lived quietly. But sometimes, just sometimes, she'd wake in the middle of the night, turn toward the mirror across from her bed, and pause. Not from fear, from recognition. Because some rooms never really leave you. Some names echo long after they're spoken. And some mirrors remember what we try hardest to forget.